But to your point of, hey, you know, what does this look like to work with a visionary like Bob, where everything basically is first on the list? It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of big dreams, which I love too. You know, we'll often unleash 10 ponies in the race. And I think working with him goes, hey, let's try and move all of those across the finish line. I'm not going to get overwhelmed. I'm just going to do the next step on each of them. Some of them will fall away. They will not cross the finish line, but a bunch will that we didn't ever expect to happen. So not getting overwhelmed is really helpful. Staying grounded in who I am. I am not a clone copy of Bob. Nobody can be.
Hey crew, it's Emily and Adam, and you're listening to The Conversation. We are back with episode 292 for you. Adam, give us a weekend recap. What were you up to this weekend?
Oh gosh, this weekend was awesome. I love weekends. I tried to do as little as possible, which is weird for someone like me. Mm-hmm. My wife would say, you do not do as little as possible. She's like, you still work more than most people do. But the weekends for me are just a sweet time with family. So I love just to unplug, go on walks with my dog, enjoy it as much as I possibly can. So that's my weekend.
Good. So it was good.
Yeah, it was very, very good.
Good. It's nice to have just time to unplug and.
I find the power and need for taking a Sabbath more than any other time.
Yeah.
Like having that downtime allows my on time to be even more impactful.
Right. And sometimes you have to like force yourself to do it too. It's like as much as I want to work so bad right now, I just need to not.
Yeah.
It goes against everything in your brain.
For me specifically, like takes high discipline not to work.
Yes.
And so high discipline, the Holy Spirit in my wife should be in like, cut that out.
Your Trinity.
Yeah, that's the Trinity in my life. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. We got a good episode for you today, and it's not possible without some awesome partners. Can you tell us about them?
Yes, our partners are amazing. Our first partner is the International Justice Mission. IJM is a global nonprofit working to end slavery and violence around the world, taking special care of survivors from the moment they are rescued all the way through their healing. And the work that they are doing right now all around the world is truly incredible. In the last 25 years, IJM has rescued more than 85,000 people from slavery, from sex trafficking, from trafficking in general. It's just insane the work that they're doing. I just want to strongly encourage you, go to ijm.org and find out more about them. I promise you won't be anything but impressed. And once you're there, get involved, sign up, become a Freedom Partner. I just can't more highly recommend it. Our second partner is Vern Eide Mitsubishi. Vern Eide is a growing employee-owned company that strives to deliver dreams and transform lives. And their goal is excellence in everything that they do. And Vern Eide is a company that I know so well, know so many of their staff. Very, very close friends with their owner. His name's Jim. Just an amazing organization. I tell everybody, I'm like, if you're looking for a car, don't go anyplace else. Go to Vern Eide. And so whether you're looking for an Outlander like I drive, whether you're looking for an Acura, Ford, Chevy, GMC, Honda, and whether you're looking for a tractor, a snowmobile, a boat.
They do that?
Everything.
Tractors?
Like no joke, you can get a tractor there.
Really?
It's insane. Like no matter what kind of vehicle you're looking for, Emily's like, oh my gosh.
I'm like, I've been looking for one of those.
I want a tractor that they have. Go to verneide.com. No matter where you live, they'll ship it to you. Our partners are amazing.
Thanks, Adam. Today we have Jody Luke on.
Yes.
The Conversation. Can you kind of just give us an overview about who's Jody, why we should listen?
Yeah, so I didn't know of Jody. I knew of the person who founded the organization she works for now. Mm-hmm. So Bob Goff. Well-known author. He's been on the podcast, super well-known, incredible guy. He started an organization called Love Does. And Love Does is a nonprofit dedicated to caring for the vulnerable and providing education in conflict zones. So Love Does is this amazing organization. Well, the other day, this is probably like a month and a half ago, I saw that Jody became the new president. And I was like, I want to know more about her. Just as a person who is a visionary, I started the church I work at. often people thank me for all the awesome stuff, and I'm like, I'm the last person to thank. They're like, the kids ministry is so amazing, and I'm like, I have children. That's the only thing that I have in contact. So I just know that oftentimes behind the owner, the leader, the whatever, there's amazing people. And so I just saw Jody as one of those. And so this episode specifically, if you're not the boss, if you're not in charge, if you're not whatever, this episode is specifically for you. And I also think it is for the boss. Like, she said a lot of things that were helpful for me. We also talked about leadership being lonely. I hope you'd hear that. I hope you'd also just be inspired by the way that she lives. She was a CPA and then went and worked for Love Does. I just thought it was awesome. And so sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. So Jody, we typically hear a person's highlight reel. Are you willing to share a current unpretty part of life? Could be grief, jadedness, whatever, however you want to take this, big or small, a current unpretty part of your life.
Well, Adam, first, I just want to say thank you for having me on your podcast. I really am honored. It's a big deal. And I noticed that I think that you are approaching your 300th episode.
I am.
Pretty soon. And that's a big deal. And so I just wanted to call it out because I know there's like effort and time and all sorts of stuff that goes into that. So just thanks for letting me be a part of it. I really appreciate it. And I have to believe that some of that is because you're authentic. And I think the world is craving that. So that's that kind of question that you start out with like that. I think I would have to say that I think leadership is lonely. And I have felt that way. I think a lot of leaders feel that way. Anyone who's been in leadership for any period of time, they've had some success. And so I look at the last couple years and I'll look at 8 things that I think are going well, but particularly in the last couple of months, I'm looking at 2 things that are really not going well. And I think I have spent an inordinate amount of time focusing on them in a way that is sort of derailed rather than moving things forward. You know, maybe thinking of it as unemotional data points that really caused me to creatively think of another solution and make some steps forward towards that, and then let that sort of guide my future. I don't know that I'm totally doing that, which probably adds to my other, I think they say your greatest superpower is your greatest weakness, which I think is efficiency. I have 3 kids, and in order for me to even operate, I needed to be efficient, to start businesses, to, just do all their lives, to be a wife and a mom and do all the stuff in ministry. I had to be super efficient. And yet I realized that you miss something there when you linger longer in some of those places, that efficiency isn't always the best thing. I have to laugh because my staff gave me that John Mark Comer book. What is it called? The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, like two Christmases ago. And then last Christmas, they gave it to me again. And I said, guys, you gave that to me last Christmas. They go, we know. I don't think you read it.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, that's not great.
I will pray for your team's souls.
I know. But we have a lot of fun. So we take all of that. And I think those things, I think that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. With the loneliness, I totally agree. Just was actually on the phone with a friend, a business leader in town here, going through some hard leadership things and just needed to vent and share. So I just listened to him. It is lonely. Anything that you found to fight against that, like to not be lonely in leadership, or do you just kind of feel like it's just a thing that you kind of have to deal with?
I think I have to remind myself that I'm actually not alone, that if faith guides your steps, which it does for me, it's integral into what I do, is that I'm not alone because I have the Lord.
Yeah.
And I have to be reminded that I'm really grateful that God uses really ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And I mean, it almost makes me emotional sometimes when I think about it. You think about Moses, you think about David, you think about Esther, and some of the stuff that I've gotten to do and the places I've been, and just to be able to see the Lord work in such extraordinary ways. I'm an ordinary person, that he's chosen to do extraordinary things because I think I said yes.
Oh,
And reminding myself in the morning of that has been really helpful. I listened at the end of last year, I was listening to a former NFL player speak. And he said, I don't know if this is true or not, but he said that every NFL game, the first 15 plays are already scripted. I don't know if that's true or not, but he was talking about, relating it to your faith. And so I spent New Year's Day this year finding my top 15 verses that mean something specific to me right now in this stage of my life, in leadership, in being a mom, and all of it. And wanted to just commit it to memory
yeah.
so that when I wake up, when have thoughts that are not helpful to me, I want to have those verses be starting my day, and
Right.
just out of rote memory. And I can, I just go down the list. You are my place of quiet retreat, my refuge and my shield. My hope is in your word. My grace is sufficient for you. I just go down those lists of verses that I've committed to memory because that's how I want to start my day. That, and also, we're in a Bible study. We've been for 20 years, same couples Bible study,
Whoa.
which has been remarkable, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's just a decision to go. You definitely don't feel like it, or there's seasons of life that it's like, you're not always on the same page, but I love the commitment of that. And I love what it's modeled also for our kids.
Yep.
But we're just going through Joshua, and I was reminded he was going on the battlefield. He had done something not right. He made a treaty with somebody he wasn't supposed to make a treaty with.
Yep.
And he said God went before him on the battlefield. And I think my day starts at 6 a.m. when my alarm goes off and I get going right away, but it doesn't. The day actually starts at midnight, and God goes before us. And I love that thought that the first 6 hours of my day, that God is advocating on my behalf, that the Holy Spirit is with me, that I'm actually waking up and joining what he's already doing.
So good.
And then if I'm really disciplined about my mind, having those thoughts that I'm trying to commit to memory, those verses, that has definitely changed the course of the way that I'm thinking in leadership and in everything, really.
So good. Oh man, I'm going through the Old Testament right now. I just finished Joshua last week. I'm into Judges, and it's just I'm like, how many times have I gone through this? First off, but just the word and all of that. Thanks for sharing that nugget of gold. Okay, so Jody, the Cliff Notes version of kind of your background. If you want to share professionally, share professionally. Share the faith part too. Where did that come into the equation? What's been your background professionally and faith wise?
So, I went to the University of Kansas. Anytime I can just throw in Rock Chalk Jayhawk, I just
Gosh,
and
you're
Midwest, because we connect over the mid. I love people from the Midwest because our entertainment in a lot of ways was people, and I
yeah.
think people are so fascinating. And early on in my life, I was really shy, and my parents said, "Hey, if you're in a room and you feel uncomfortable or you're shy, ask people questions." And people love to talk about themselves, and that really is true. People will go on and on and on and on. And
It's
so I
true.
learned from an early age how to ask questions, and then I found people incredibly fascinating.
Whoa.
So I didn't just ask questions, but I also really loved listening.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my background with my family, is just cultivating this love of people and learning, and then being in the Midwest, where I just think, we were talking earlier, bad weather develops good character, and so there's a ton of people full of good character. And uh, my parents came to faith because when I was 3, because they moved across the street from a church, and the pastor came over one day and invited them to church and
Whoa.
basically said, "Hey, have you heard about this thing called grace?" And honestly, it just rocked my parents' world. They weren't really faith church going people at the time.
Wow.
And my mom is funny because when she talked about it, she said, then I wanted to call my friends and say, hey, have you heard about this thing called grace? And they somehow didn't it didn't fall on them the same way it did on her. And so I really watched my parents articulate their faith really well to us because I think it was such a fresh realization in their life. We went
Yeah.
to church, and as we would come home, my dad would always just talk about Ephesians 2, but for by grace you've been saved through faith. And it was just part of our life. But then at some point as a kid, you have to say, hey, is this my parents or is this mine?
Yep.
And what does that look like? And so you're taking some steps towards that. My background is in finance. I got my CPA. I worked at Price Waterhouse in Chicago, ended up transferring to San Diego and met a guy named Bob Goff early or late in the 1990s, which makes
Whoa.
me feel so old. And we connected through Young Life at the time. And then just kind of stayed in touch. And I was pursuing a financial career and started my own business, helped others start their businesses. And then Bob had reached out, maybe 12, 13, 14 years ago and said, hey, would you help me with some of the stuff that he was doing business-wise, and then also for his nonprofit to kind of help on that end. So it was just sort of a conglomeration of all of that. And I think when you talk about faith, I think one of the things I've appreciated about Love Does and Bob is this thought of really Matthew 25, that it's the hungry and the thirsty and the sick and the stranger and the naked, and don't forget those that are in prison. That the Bible
Yeah.
also talks a lot about widows and orphans. And being in those spaces, and I think as I've led with Love Does, it's in those spaces as well. And we've really just seen remarkable things happen because that's where Jesus is. And I think about a lot of people who have had a really successful financial career or just a career in general, and then are at this time in their life where they have some more time and want to step out in faith, and you don't quite know how. And I love going back to Matthew 25. And so if there's ever a question, jump into those spaces and places. That's where Jesus is. They're special. I think you go there, and I think you find your next steps. And we certainly have found that within Love Does. And I found that in my own life, and just putting faith into action in a really meaningful way.
Jody, you are walking exactly where I was planning on going. This is awesome. Was that professionally when you made that leap? Was that a step of faith for you, or no?
I think sometimes I think the Lord puts things on your heart sometimes early on in your life, and it's confusing because it doesn't seem like those doors are opening right away. And I think for me, I was really cognizant of those. And so I knew I had a heart for being in these places to lead in this way. And yet I had 3 young kids at the time. And so
Yeah.
there's seasons for those things. I was also running my own business during that time, but I'm holding on to that. And I think just hearing it's sort of the small voice of God nudging me in different seasons is also really helpful. I liken it again. I'm a big sports person. I like it again to football, where you have that running back and you have blockers in front of you and you really can't see. And there are a lot of people who reach out to me all the time, like, I want to do stuff, I just don't know what the next step
Yep.
is. And it's really dark like that. And then all of a sudden the blockers open up a hole, and it's very clear that you're supposed to run through the hole and just run like crazy if you're running back. And that's how it felt to me. It was like when Bob reached out, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago, whenever that was, and said, hey, would you help? It was one of those, like, the Red Sea parted, run, go. I knew. But I only knew because of the years prior that I was trying to hear God's voice. And I was just waiting. And it's okay to be in seasons that are in a waiting. And then when there's a season where you get that feeling like I got to go, then go. And Bob's a crazy person. Like,
Yeah.
dreams are really big. It kind of seems sometimes like, is this like even feasible?
Yeah.
And yet it was like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Jody, so when I saw you became the president of Love Does, how long ago was that?
Well, I became the executive director. So I was on the financial side again for a long time. And then I became the executive director about 3 years ago with really the idea to grow Love Does. So
Yeah.
we were in about 6 or 7 countries. And Bob said, in Bob's way, he goes, hey, I really want you to take it over. And would you double it? And we did.
Whoa.
I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I know that because my husband also took it and that test, and he goes, I'm a 3. And I go, seriously? I am such a better 3 than you. I was trying to figure out if I was a 2 or a 3. And then I was like, I guess I'm a 3. So Bob put this goal in front of me and I was like, let's do it. And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, we've doubled things. And this last fall, he said, hey, you know, I think let's have your title be president. And so then we announced it earlier this year.
So cool. So when I saw that, I immediately was this. That's what I was like. I want to talk to her. Uh, and why I say that is because so I pastor a church. I started when I was 24. I'm 42. I think we have a staff of 40 some people. I can't believe I get to be a part of this, but I'm the person who often gets the praise. So people will come up to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that thing in the entryway," or this ministry. They're like, "Thank you so much." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I had nothing to do with that." So I'll pass that on to the true people who made that happen. And that's when I saw you, Jody. I'm like, I bet there's a whole lot of awesomeness inside of you. And so that's why I was drawn to you. I was just like, I have to connect with her. And so can we make this possible? So maybe to start, just really kind of a Cliff Notes version. What does Love Does actually do? Like share just like as briefly as you can. What does that look like?
Well, Love Does cares for the vulnerable, fights for human rights, and provides education in conflict zones.
Yeah.
Really have found that in conflict zones, providing schools gives the biggest opportunity for change. But honestly, we're just really aggressive on the doing part. Bob wrote the book Love Does. So that was a whole, that was a long time ago. Since then, it's like 4 million copies. People really resonated with that. I think putting love into action.
Yep.
And so this nonprofit really mirrors that. Um, and so we have schools, safe houses, women's resource centers, get to be in some remarkable places, and then expanded our domestic programs pretty significantly over the last couple of years to have refugee programs. We became the largest provider of food to Afghan refugees in the fall of 2021. In San Diego, we go visit San Quentin. We've got a Dream Big program and a number of programs up at this prison in Northern California. Remarkable things that have happened there. And then we have a single mom home. And then we have boutiques where, single moms can shop for free. So we're kind of like this appetizer dish of everything. But that's what I think Matthew 25 is really.
Yeah.
It's that hungry, thirsty, sick, stranger, naked, don't forget those that are in prison, and widows and orphans is a big deal. And so try to mirror that with trusted leaders on the ground, both domestically and internationally. And it's been around really for 20 years, and now we get to see the fruit of our labor 2 decades later. I think one of the things about being involved with Love Does is just you major in redemption stories. Congratulations for pastoring a church for 20 years. You've seen your share of redemption stories. When you see them up close and personal, grace in such a powerful way, you're almost addicted to it. You can't wait to see it more. You just want to be more in those places where God is doing amazing things. And that's what I feel like Love Does is doing in all of these places. And I'm in awe. And I think we're called to be in awe, really, not of what we're doing, because I don't think we're equipped to be worshiped. I think the Lord is the one who's to be worshiped. But when it's less of me and more of him, he takes up that space. And I think he does more than we can ask or imagine. And that has been by far the case in some of these really difficult places to work. If it's northern Uganda or Somalia or Afghanistan, our school is still open in Afghanistan, in the Dominican Republic, in Israel. I was just talking with somebody 2 weeks ago. Could we start a school in Gaza? Would love it. Let's do it. Nepal, Poland, Ukraine. I mean, I was in Ukraine last summer and I was there. They would have one funeral a week for all the soldiers who had lost their lives. It's a remarkable thing to when the whole town stops and then they have a processional through the town. Shopkeepers come out, kneel on the sidewalk. And I was talking with them because we have a boutique that we just opened up there where if you're a new mom, you can kind of shop for free. Most of them are widows at this point. And they are in the thick of it. I mean, there is just trauma and it is really difficult. And I said, how are things going? And she said, we just had the funeral that you were at this summer. We just had that today. And she said, there's not an able-bodied man left in the town to carry the casket to the car. I mean, we're just talking about some really difficult places that then you get to bring in really a practical way hope. And then, of course, you work with Bob, and there's this element not just of education and hope, but also of whimsy, and I know he's talked about it a lot, but we were in Uganda together last fall. We met with the first lady and the president. We're starting this university next door to our primary and secondary school that now we're expanded, has 1,800 at it.
Whoa.
We're building this university, which has like 2,000 steps. He said to me, Jody, I don't know if I have energy for it, but if you do, you should go after it. And that was 2 years ago. And again, as a 3, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like giving candy to a little kid.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. And then you're on step 800 of 2,000. You're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. But he doesn't stop there. He says, let's build a zoo next door. I said, Bob, a zoo feels like a lot. And he's like, all right, fine, giraffes. And I was like, is he really serious? Because sometimes I have to go, is he really serious?
Yeah.
I walked into my office after that trip, and there was like a 6-foot giraffe on my desk. I was like, I think he's serious. But I love it because people in northern Uganda have not seen a giraffe. And so now we're putting a world-class university next to our primary and secondary school that just boasted one of the best test scores in the country, that where very few great things have come from northern Uganda other than, unrest.
Yep.
And so now it's a place known for progress, not its past. And then you're going to look out the window and see a giraffe. And don't you think that any of those kids or that staff doesn't think, hey, what's not possible here? And so I love that element of awe and wonder that is instrumental in everything we do with Love Does as well.
That's incredible. I mean, you hit on so many things I'm passionate about, whether it's prison ministry. We have a God Behind Bars campus connected to the church and trying to start another one. An organization I love is IJM. I don't know if you know International Justice Mission. I'm going with them to Kenya next month and can't wait for that. And then we've started several schools in Haiti, a country that's just near and dear to my soul. So hearing all of that just fires me up. Okay, so there's so many questions I want to ask. In the most honoring way, what are the pros? And I don't even know what the relationship looks like with Bob. I'm trying to ask for someone who has a situation similar. What are the pros and cons of working underneath a crazy visionary? Maybe start there if you're willing just to share like pros and cons that would be transferable even.
Well, first of all, you are welcome with us anytime to San Quentin.
Oh, I would love to.
Yeah, prison ministry is remarkable to somebody's faith. To be able, we do a Dream Big program there, and then Love Does comes besides with some educational scholarships because there's 2 million incarcerated people. Most of them will be your neighbors. So they say today's incarcerated person is tomorrow's neighbor. And, we offer scholarships. And I think of the 2 million incarcerated men and women, only 7% are taking bachelor level classes. We graduated 2 from our class last year who just got their bachelor's degree.
Awesome.
Super about it. And then dreaming of, envisioning a life that you don't currently see yourself in right now is so powerful.
Yes.
And see that nobody is beyond redemption and grace and hope. You just see it in such a practical way. I can go on and on about the story because they're so beautiful. So you're welcome to join us there.
I was supposed to be in prison earlier today. We're trying to get into another prison, and they had a lockdown go in place yesterday. Yeah. So my meeting got canceled, and I'm so sad.
Well, hey, join us there. The DR, we got Haitian, a lot of Haitian refugees, which really aren't refugees because they don't have status, are in the outskirts of DR. We have a women's resource center in Sosua. And then, of course, seriously, you are welcome to join us anytime where anyone is on a vision trip. So I love that part of it. And I think being somebody who was also looking how do you use your gifts and talents in this next season of life? in a really practical way. And so it's really fun when I can make those connections with other people as well.
That's
But
awesome.
to your point of, hey, what does this look like to work with a visionary like that, where everything basically is first on the list? It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of big dreams, which I love too. We'll often unleash 10 ponies in the race. And I think working with him goes, hey, let's try and move all of those across the finish line. I'm not going to get overwhelmed. I'm just going to do the next step on each of them. Some of
Good.
them will fall away. They will not cross the finish line, but a bunch will that we didn't ever expect to happen. So not getting overwhelmed is really helpful. Staying grounded in who I am. I am not a clone copy of Bob. Nobody can be. Nobody's a clone copy of each other. So what
So
does it
good.
look like then to have a founder of a church or an organization? And then how do you really pass that on to a successor? Bob is the president of the board. I talk to Bob every day, I talk to him all the time, really like 5 minutes at a time because he's so busy. But he's involved in everything we're doing. I hope that I am the interim president of Love Does for 20 years. And I really hope that the mark of my success is that I get to then pass it on to the next interim president. And then there's a next interim president after that. Probably ashamedly, I don't know the names of all the head leadership at World Vision or of Compassion, but I know World Vision, I know Compassion very well. I hope that people will know Love Does. And it outlasts Bob, it outlasts myself,
Yeah.
mainly because I think of the 5-year-old who I saw at graduation in Uganda, who was in this really cute pink graduation gown as she was graduating from preschool. And I want to make sure that our schools are available to her. So I want to make them sustainable. And I want to make this organization sustainable so that it's around for her to graduate high school and then be around for the university. And that's on me to do. And I consider it a privilege and a gift to be able to do it. And I think
Yeah.
one of the secrets of that is not getting, like I said, in leadership, I'm not a clone copy of Bob. I love how Bob leads. I love his heart for things. He thinks of the world in such a unique way, as evidenced by the millions of books that have been sold.
Yeah.
How do we keep what is the heart and soul of the founder of Bob always within Love Does? As I said, we were talking earlier, I met my husband, through Young Life, and Jim Rayburn started Young Life. He said it's a sin to bore kids with the gospel. I never met Jim Rayburn. He was long past when I got involved, but that is still really integral to that organization. And so, being aggressive on the doing part of Love Does, putting love into action, and then including whimsy and awe and wonder in what we're doing in some really difficult places of the world, both abroad and in our own backyard, will always be integral to Love Does. And we have this really great family of friends around the world that have jumped in. And I hope they'll always be committed to it because it's just remarkable things are happening. Again, how cool that God chooses ordinary people to do extraordinary things.
So good. Any other advice? Because I know I'm a little bit of a bigger personality, and so even for someone on my team, there's just unique things. And I love how you said Bob is him and you are you. And I shouldn't try to be him. Any other advice that you would give to somebody who has a leader that's a bigger personality or whatever, of like what's helpful to run the race really well in that position? Any other thoughts that you'd have, Jody?
How lucky that they get to work with you. And I hope that they feel like that and they continue to champion you and lead out of a place of gratefulness, that they got to learn, be inspired, be championed by you. And as you champion them, they do the same in this reciprocal nature. I think, again, you're the leader, you're the founder, I think, of your
Yep.
church.
Yep.
But you're not the Lord.
Yes. Thank God.
And I think we're just keeping that straight in your successor's mind and heart is really, really helpful. And, I have a background in finance. And so as a fractional CFO, I really helped, and I was a CPA, so I still am, but really help people kind of start their businesses. And one of the most difficult things to do is to start a business, as it is to start a church or to start a nonprofit. It's really hard. One of the next most difficult things is to take that nonprofit or church or business and go to that medium-sized level. That's also very difficult. And that takes a different skill set. And so for those people that are succeeding you to lean into, they're really good at that skill set. And for such a time as this is their time to add to it and to grow what you started. And what a cool thing.
That's super
I
cool.
think I really do. I lead out of a place of gratefulness. And I'm so grateful that I have gotten to work with and learn from and be inspired by Bob.
I love that. I love that. Anything that you would say as far as culture of like, what's the secret sauce? You've kind of mentioned whimsy and different things. What would you say is the secret sauce of the culture you're in at Love Does?
Having fun and being creative. Some of the places that we're in, if it's in prison or, with women at a safe house, I mean, those are some really difficult stories to hear where people have
Yes.
endured unthinkable things. But then somehow to bring balloons, and not because you're dismissing it or undermining what they've been through, but I think there's something really scientific about injecting joy or wonder or even smiling when people are in traumatic situations. I mean, I remember being at the border of Ukraine and Poland, and Bob and I went to the local grocery store and we bought out the Kinder eggs. It's like this, it has a toy in it. And with all of these people that were just getting off the train and were fleeing for their life, we were offering them a Kinder egg. You saw this one particular woman, it was like the stress lines on her forehead. And then all of a sudden you give her a Kinder egg and she just smiled.
Whoa.
And our Tyler, who's this amazing photographer, Halley Project, I love championing him and all of the people I get to work with. So I love that you also recognize you have a great team behind you. And I think that is one of the secret sauces of going forward is it is a great team. I have an amazing team, and Drew and Riley and Nate and Stephanie and Betsy and Susie and Lindsay and this great team that all makes so much of this stuff happen. But I think when we all get together, we think about, I know right now we're going to send some of our annual reports. And part of it is not just printing our annual report, but it's like, how can we make this fun? Let's think about putting some confetti in. What creative thing can we do? Oh, we're going to go to Uganda. What creative, fun thing can we do? Because I think God has said, hey, I want you to have life and life to the full. And that includes a lot of joy, even in really some really difficult places.
What a great conversation between Adam and Jody. Adam, you got any other words for us after that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Jody's been trying to get me to go to prison with her, which is a funny statement to say, but she's been trying to do that. I think she also wants me to go to Uganda and see the work that they're doing. So Jody, I'm going to say yes one of these days and go to prison with you. Something I don't want to do with many people, but I will do it with Jody.
Only with Jody.
So Jody, thanks to you just for the time. Also, thanks to our partners, the International Justice Mission, amazing. Vern Eide Motor Cars, incredible. Please go find out more about them. To all of you who listen, I'm so grateful that you would listen to this episode and to any episode. If you haven't done so yet, go hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You can watch the whole episodes on YouTube as well. So if you haven't found me there, go do that. But have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.